Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I wanted to sit down and record a video which will be the second part to understanding evil. If you haven't already watched my first video on the topic of evil, I would recommend going back and watching that video first, because that will give you the necessary context to understand this second part and what I'm going to be talking about today. So what I wanted to get into in this video is essentially the way in which evil manifests itself in this world, and more specifically in the astral dimension. So maybe you're familiar with the concept, first and foremost, of an astral dimension. The fourth dimension, it's often referred to as the most easy way to understand it would be it's the realm, the plane of consciousness that we travel to when we dream. That's a fourth dimensional space. So in some ways it's similar to a third dimensional space in that we still decode it using our five sense perceptions, but there is a more psychic, non-physical element to it where, for example, when we're dreaming, we have access to different abilities. There are laws that are specific to this third dimensional realm that don't apply there. And there is a much more greater potential for exploration and expansion of consciousness beyond the five sense perceptions. So that's probably the easiest way I would understand it. The fourth dimension is a realm that's constantly interfacing with this plane of consciousness. It's a realm where you will find the spirit world. It's the realm where the shamans travel to around the world when they work with plant medicines or go on a vision quest to commune with the spirit world to receive guidance and information. It's also the realm where the spirits of our Mother Earth dwell and reside. It's essentially the less physical aspect within which this third dimensional plane is expressing itself. You could say it's closer to reality than this third dimensional realm. And there you will find love, light, benevolence, spirits that are of the earth, spirits that also have more of a conscious connection. You will find beings, entities that are tied to the dream space and work with us in the dream time. You will find beings that actually choose to take an experience there, like we as human beings right now as a soul have chosen to take this experience as a human in this realm. There are also beings that choose specifically to come into this fourth dimensional realm to make their own experiences there, because there is always more and more learning and essentially an infinite potential for consciousness to experience itself. And some souls, some beings want to make that learning, growth, evolution experience in the fourth dimension. So why is this relevant to evil? Well, there is also a darker side, or a darker dimension within this fourth dimensional realm, which is used by evil, used by this evil force that resides in Saturn to impose its will onto the worldly plane of our five senses, the human experience and this planetary ecosystem in the third dimension from this fourth dimension. it would be too long to get into the history and the story and the reasons to why evil originally came to exist in this fourth dimensional space. But it has to do with the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, which I may have mentioned in my last video. But essentially, after the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, there was a frequential imposition, an installation created that limited the frequency of Gaia and the planetary ecosystem. And in doing so, the evil force, the evil presence that infiltrated Atlantis and Lemuria and was responsible for catalyzing the fall and this great global conflict and disaster, was also held within this frequency field. So not only were the remaining beings that survived and went into the earth, amongst other places, held in this frequential limitation from this installation, but also the entities, the evil entities that serve this evil force in Saturn, were also held within this frequential matrix, and this became what we can now conceptualize as the third density or third dimension and fourth density or fourth dimension. So how do these entities present themselves? How do they manifest themselves? Well, there are several main ways. There are probably in the thousands, I would say, of ways in which evil entities manifest themselves, how they appear, what form they take. But there are some main types, main protagonists that have collaborated and colluded and essentially have some sort of evil alliance in the fourth dimension that are working and have worked since the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria to keep the human race in a lower level of consciousness, a lower level of awareness, and have been responsible for manipulating the planet in a much more overt way than these other, maybe less significant entities, which are still parasitic and still malevolent. But there are some main ones which I'll get into now. So the first main group of these entities are reptilians, or reptilian shapeshifters, alligator beings. They would have been referred to as Anunnaki in esoteric literature. Also in mainstream religious texts you will find that word, Anunnaki. And these reptilian shapeshifters are essentially the leaders of this evil alliance in the astral dimension. And they, like all the other astral entities, don't have a connection to the source consciousness. They don't have soul. They are a manifestation of this malevolent intelligence. And the reptiles, different to the other entities, are more directly responsible for manipulating the human race from within the third dimension by interfacing with people that have a certain blood type, that have a certain genetic makeup. You may have come across the concept of elite bloodlines or royal bloodlines. This comes about from the reptiles, the Anunnaki, coming and taking human females, more specifically of a Nordic genetic type, interbreeding with them to create a hybrid genetic bloodline, essentially fusing their reptilian DNA, shall we say, with the human DNA sequence, which was also altered by them and by other entities to be a 12 strand as opposed to a 24 plus strand DNA chain, to create this hybrid bloodline, which was put into positions of power and influence all the way back to all the way back from ancient Sumer through Egypt over into Europe, into Rome, um, moving eventually to settle in the British Isles, and then extending itself from the British Isles across the world. And this royal bloodline, or elite reptilian hybrid bloodline, currently still now inhabits positions of power and influence in government, the economic system, big business, the judiciary system, the technology sector, basically anything that is influencing the way in which people think, perceive, and experience reality. In those places where the decisions are being made, you will find these bloodlines at the highest level. And what's significant about these bloodlines is that the reptilian beings are a direct compatible match with these people to interface with them. I've heard it described that you can imagine it. Let's just take, well, he was Prince Charles, King Charles, or the Queen, or Barack Obama, or Donald Trump, or Elon Musk. Pick any Satanist psychopath of your liking or disliking, and imagine that basically they have a face, a holographic impression that appears human, that they're showing to the world. There's a frequency field of information that looks, sounds, and functions like a human being. That's their human genetic side, which exists in the third dimension, which they're using to go about their day-to-day business, go about their affairs, have meetings with people, make these decisions against the human race. And they have another frequency field of information which is resting behind that, and that's sitting in the fourth dimension. You can imagine the fourth dimension as like a backdrop, an overlay behind underlay behind the third dimensional layer. They're always interacting and interfacing with each other, exchanging information. And in these shapeshifters, these hybrids, the reptile side is actually really what's controlling what this third dimensional hologram is doing in the world. It's the information and the command, the instruction, is being given by this reptilian entity, which is essentially like a puppet master pulling the strings of something here that moves, looks, talks, sounds like a human being, but it's actually not. It's a genetic hybrid that comes from this original interbreeding of the reptilian entities with human females to create this hybrid bloodline. Interestingly, with the reptilians, like other entities, they aren't able to maintain their own energy field like we are as organic soul-based beings, from our connection to the source, and also from the nutrients that we take in from our environment and our atmosphere and from our sun. So they have to extract energy and resource from outside themselves, which they do by maintaining a low frequency field within the human population, which generates a energy from suffering, essentially keeping the human race in states of like fear, shame, guilt, smallness, insecurity, by repeating and maintaining trauma. There's an energy that's given off by humans and also by other animals and organisms on the planet that they feed off of. This is referred to often as loosh in the sort of fields that deal with this sort of information. It's a relatively recent term that a man coined. I think he was a physicist, a scientist, or a psychologist, or a combination of all of those, who was connected to deep state government. Don't quote me exactly on this. This is just what I remember. Who was going into the astral dimension. He was able to astral project, which is kind of like lucid dreaming. Consciously it will go into the astral dimension, and what he was seeing and perceiving there, which has been documented by thousands of people at this point, were these reptilian entities, and he could sense, see, perceive that they were feeding off an energy that was being generated by the suffering of the human race and the planet, and he called that loosh. And there's so much information out there with regards to experiences people have had encountering reptilian beings, seeing shape-shifting happening, seeing people who are in these positions of power and influence shifting from one form into another, especially in the context of satanic rituals, which are very important to this cult, because it's the satanic rituals that in the microcosm are a reflection of the macrocosm, whereby people are being held captive or taken, mostly children, and tortured and treated in horrific ways, which are almost too bad to speak of, to generate this loosh energy, which I might add in children is a much more potent form of loosh, which is also why this global cult and the Satanists and these reptilian hybrids are often connected to pedophilia and child trafficking and child abuse, because it's the way in which they're most readily able to extract some sort of life force energy, because otherwise they would die out. Without human suffering, this reptilian force and these other entities, might I add, would not be able to sustain themselves, which is why it's important, I feel, for myself right now, like many other people are doing, to speak out and to get this information out there and share about this as a phenomena, because when we're knowledgeable about it, we reclaim a certain amount of our power and individual sovereignty, where we won't subjugate ourselves to their machinations and manipulation for them to essentially keep us disempowered and small, whilst they go on, essentially running the show on that superficial level. It has to stop, and it will stop, and it also has to start with us becoming more awake and more aware to what's been going on for millennia on this planet. And this evil agenda has been commanded at the forefront by this reptilian force that I've just spoken about. So, moving away now from reptiles, another major entity group would be the entity collective of the greys, the grey alien. This is also quite well known about and well documented, not just in popular culture, or you would find this as being the most common depicted alien life form. I wouldn't call a grey actually an alien life form. It's an astral parasite. It's a creature that is living in this astral dimension that has been mistaken, and also probably through some sort of psychological operation has come into the culture through science fiction and movies and literature, as it's become this like archetypal alien. Ask anyone, like, draw an alien, they're gonna draw probably this grey alien being, the short body, the big head, the oval shaped head, the big black eyes, like the slender sort of arms and legs. Um, um, but they're not an alien. They're another astral parasite that is collective in its nature. I like to liken the greys, as they're called, commonly with the Borg. If you've seen Star Trek, the Borg are essentially a cybernetic, technologically based hive mind that is a fusion of biological material as like the base with like a technological overlay. Like part the Borg are part human, part machine, but the Greys are not human. They're an organism of a sort with a technological suit that they wear, which is essentially a vehicle, like a suit, a technology that they're using to interface with this dimension. So, in what way is the grey alien involved in the manipulation of the human race? Well, if you could understand the reptiles as being the ones that are running the show, the greys are the servants to the reptiles. This collaboration between the greys and the reptiles has also been going on as long as there has been this installation, this matrix that has kept the human frequency field in the third dimensional realm. And the greys are responsible for building and maintaining that matrix. In fact, not just building and maintaining it, but also altering that matrix, making adjustments, installing false pieces of information that keep us lost, confused, and believing that we are creating a reality that we're actually not. The Greys are technicians in the sense that you would have a program writer or a computer scientist or someone who is responsible for writing software and programming a computer system. The Greys essentially work in a similar way with our matrix. You can understand the third density and the fourth dimensional matrix, at least the aspect that is being used by this evil force, as being kind of like a holographic simulation. Although I wouldn't say it's all holographic, there is more of an organic element to it than a synthetic one. But the world that we find ourselves in today, especially in the 20th and 21st century, is more of a synthetic computer simulation like matrix. Hence you see people that seem to have no individuality, people that seem to be like generic copies of each other, going about their day maintaining the matrix, maintaining the illusion, repeating the same lives, people living a life that's almost an identical copy to the person next to them. And it's important to question, why is that? When there's so many potentials in this reality for us to express ourselves, why are so many people copying each other? This is a manifestation of this grey alien hive mind programming, which has also been taken on as information by the human collective population. Essentially, the way in which the greys think, the synthetic orientation that the grey aliens have, and the way in which they're building a matrix in the fourth dimension, is how the human race is thinking in a hive mind like way and building and maintaining this matrix in the third dimension, which is really an imposition from this fourth dimension, from these beings. Now, the ways in which this has happened are very, very complex. It has lots to do with our five sense perception, the way in which our brain takes in information and decodes that and creates a holographic representation of what it thinks that information is giving it. And when the brain, this organism, is given information that has a certain frequency, the human organism, the human brain, and the human being that does not have that level of awareness and understanding and connection to truth will decode that information, take it to be reality, and therefore build a reality, the reality where you find, massive cities that seem to be only oriented around maintaining a false economy that doesn't get anyone anywhere closer to freedom, building a reality that seems to favor technology and artificial intelligence creation rather than uniting on the level of our spirit, our emotions, and connection to the earth. And many, many people have taken on this programming and are now becoming more and more like the grey alien. Interestingly, the grey alien has no individuality. They are all copies of each other. They are all reflections of the next. In a sense, you could understand them like clones. And there is a dimension of truth to this whereby the reptilian beings are creating the greys through genetic engineering experiments, cloning experiments, and using technology which the reptiles have a very, very advanced knowledge of. That's one of their strong suits, let's say. The significant level of advancement in technology, because they've been given that freedom to explore that for such a long time. That's very much a way that the greys and the reptiles are imposing their will. It's very much a technological agenda as much as it is an agenda to keep the human race in a limited state of consciousness. So that's greys and reptiles. Grey aliens, just to recap, they're silver and metallic-like in appearance. They have the large sort of bulbous head, the big black eyes that are sort of like goggles, and sort of like a smooth, shiny body, a body without like texture, more like rubber. And this level or layer to it is actually a technology. It's like a machine. It's like an avatar, if you will, something that a creature is inhabiting, and this creature that lives inside this suit is reptile-like also. I've heard a Zulu shaman, Credo Mutwa, who talks lots and lots about this this force and these entities, very, very knowledgeable. Zanusi, that's a Zulu wisdom keeper who's held this chain of information unbroken up until the present day. He died in relatively recent times. He speaks of encounters with these greys amongst other entities, and he calls them pinkies because underneath the grey suit, you have a creature that is like pink, like it has pink skin basically. The eyes are reptile-like. They have serrated, pointed teeth. They can sometimes have claws or claw-like protrusions. So that's the two different levels to the grey, if you will. And the final group that I'd like to talk about is the tall white, or the Nordic entity, the Nordic aliens, as they've been referred to. I'll just take a drink here. So yeah, the tall whites and the Nordics, or tall whites or Nordics, these are the different names that are given to them. Again, these are part of this evil alliance where you will find the Nordics, the tall whites, collaborating with the greys very, very closely. And then the leaders of this evil alliance are the reptiles. The tall whites are also grey-like in appearance, but interestingly they can take two forms, hence the two ways in which they have been called and conceptualized. The tall white is grey alien-like in appearance. It has a oval-shaped head, although much smaller than the grey. The grey alien is much smaller in stature. You know, these are usually around 4 or 5 feet tall, but they can get up to 7 feet tall. The tall whites are much taller. We're talking like 8 feet plus, but they have the same metallic suit body, which again is a technology. But the suit of the tall white is still silvery and metallic, but it's radiating what you could say is light. It's a false light. It's a frequency that simulates light because they don't have connection to the source consciousness. Therefore, they can't generate light within themselves. But they have, like the grey, a slender, smooth body, long arms, very long arms, in proportion to the actual main torso. Long legs, or average sized legs, but the diameter is very thin, like the arms, thin diameter on the arms and the legs. And an oval shaped head with again the goggle like eyes. And what you will find within the tall white suit, which is again a technology, the technology that is used for them to interface with between the fourth dimension and the third dimension, like the grey alien. I forgot to mention, the suit is a way in which they can interface with the third dimension and back into the fourth without having a human host. Because the frequency is so different, it's actually very hard to physically come from the fourth dimension into the third. The way that's made possible with the reptiles is through the genetic hybridization. That's how the reptile interfaces with this reality through the human hybrid that they are paired with. That's how they manage it. The greys and the tall whites do that via the technology, via the suit that enables them to materialize and manifest in the third dimension and then disappear seemingly in an instant back into the fourth. There have been numerous accounts of sightings of tall whites, grey aliens, as well as reptiles doing this, materializing or seeming to appear and then disappear. This is really not like jumping between locations. It's phasing in and out of this dimension. The technology that the tall whites and the greys have enables this. Otherwise, for them, if they were to do that without the suit, there would be almost instant annihilation, or like at least their biology would start to degrade. The tall whites are higher in authority than the grey aliens. They're still subservient to the reptiles, although they have more independence. They are responsible for the management of the matrix programming that the greys are mostly doing, creating false light realities by putting into our reality certain code, which then we decode and misinterpret reality by doing so, by taking in this code that the grey aliens are creating. The tall whites are responsible for overseeing this project. They're also responsible for overseeing human hybridization projects where human beings are taken in abduction scenarios and their genetic material is harvested to create experimental hybrids, which is done so because these entities are also looking for a way to more directly possess and control the human race. That's part of this hybridization agenda. That's also part of the agenda as to why we're moving in a much more technology-oriented direction, and there's a big push from this evil force orchestrated by the greys and the tall whites, who are the ones that are creating this technology through the possession of the minds of these people who, are pioneering technology in Silicon Valley and other places. There's an agenda there to create a technological, artificially intelligent hybrid with the human race. Elon Musk has talked about this, as has other, prominent Satanists. His name escapes me now. The Google CEO. They're all about bridging the gap between AI and the human race. Really, the darker, deeper agenda behind this is to create a human being that is more readily possessed and manipulated by these evil entities, to create a realm where human consciousness has no sovereignty or free will, essentially to create a human race that is compliant and will serve as an energy resource for these entities for however long they expect to do this. It's not going to work because, well, quite frankly, I don't think the planet and the human race is going to be here much longer with view to ascension and our consciousness elevating beyond the third dimension. The consciousness of Gaia, the soul of Gaia, is also going through ascension right now into the fifth dimension, which is beyond the reach of these entities. These desperate attempts playing out on the world stage are just that. They're last desperate attempts to try to keep a human race in their clutches when we're anything but in that place right now. I apologize for going on these tangents. It's just kind of, when I speak, there's so many rabbit holes and like side avenues and angles to explore. But with regards to the Nordics, the tall whites, they also have a holographic representation that they often will portray to people that they make contact with that looks like a Nordic human being, a human being that is tall, has a fair complexion, blue eyes, fair hair, In some ways, they have Pleiadian-like qualities, although I wouldn't say there are any Pleiadians, maybe Taigetans that look this way, but the tall whites have developed a way in which they present themselves through a holographic image to coerce people into trusting them, or even forming some alliance or consenting their will over to them. This is one of the ways in which in the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, many human beings at the time signed away their sovereignty to these beings that appeared and professed that they were from another dimension, another realm that came with advanced technology and a different interpretation of life, when actuality they weren't these highly advanced Nordic type extraterrestrials. It was again another deception and manipulation from the tall whites, which again I might add, underneath the technology, you take away the Nordic type hologram, you go behind the technological silver white suit, you'll find also something that is reptilian. Reptilian eyes, pink skin, or even grey skin, like the grey beings that I talked about. So yeah, there's a lot of information there. I'm just seeing the video length now. I kind of anticipated it would be more simple. I've kind of kept it, I feel like, simple enough to understand. There's so many nuances to this kind of topic when it comes to the astral dimension and these different entities and how they've been manipulating humanity. But essentially, to summarize, you have, like I explored in the previous video, you have this much larger evil force that resides in Saturn, that has been imposing its will onto this planet and this solar system for as long as it has existed. You have entities which would number in their thousands of different varieties, but there are three main types that are in an alliance with each other, that are more directly serving the will of this greater evil force. They are the reptiles, the leaders of this alliance. You have the tall whites, who are in charge of implementing the maintenance, the structuring, and the programming of this third density false light matrix and creating the human hive mind. And then you have the grey aliens, which are orchestrating that are via this chain of command, the ones that are building this, they're the programmers, the coders, the ones that are directly creating, building, coding, and orienting this matrix in a certain direction. There is a fourth group, which I didn't get into because of time, which are Insectoids. Essentially, just very quickly, they are at the same sort of level as the tall whites. They're kind of overseers, but they're more involved in the hybridization side and the abduction side of things. So yeah, that's all about the different entities in the astral dimension. I want to finish by saying that this information that I'm sharing is actually in no way to create more fear or to disempower people or to make it seem like it's hopeless and like the human race is lost. In actuality, we've never been more free than we have been now. It's just that what has been persisting and influencing us from the astral dimension for all these millennia is now more and more coming to the surface because there's so much light. It's almost like the more light, the more muck and filth and dirt you're able to expose. We have our sovereignty in our hearts always. As long as we have our connection to our soul, to truth, we know our personal truth, and we start to question what we're being told. We start to question authority, and we start to reclaim our power where there have been attempts to take it away from us by this unseen force. We are already liberated. There's nothing they can do, no matter how much they might try to make us think a certain way or program us to be, unindividuated and to build and maintain this matrix. No matter how much they've tried to alter our thought process to keep us separate and in a low level of consciousness, they've never succeeded ever at disconnecting us from really who we are as infinite beings, as creators of reality and expressions of the source consciousness and children of this earth. Because that light is so magnificent and powerful that they can't come close to it. It's like, a mosquito, getting too close to, a brilliant, hot light. It's just going to get burned. They can't get, you can only get so close to the sun before it starts to burn you, and then before long, you've been broken down by it because of the immense fire that is held there. And that's us. That's us at our core. They'll never be able to change that. And it's ending anyway, looking out into the world, and it looks like, people are giving away their power more than ever to technology, and becoming more and more alike, and people, in the average population that you see having no independent thought. These people essentially, well, that's another dimension. Will I say they're not real? Yeah. There are people walking around that are sort of non-player characters, if you get what I mean, like they don't have that spiritual connection to begin with. These are also people that have been born through these grey alien projects, this targeted programming, a bit like in a Sims world, to try to fill out the matrix, to present us with a reality that seems like it's in their favor, to try to disconnect us from our power again, to try to trick us into believing that they have the upper hand. But, those who know themselves know, and those who seem to be asleep are not really existing anyway. It's just another part of this installation that's gone to a different level now, in these last-ditch attempts to try to trick us, deceive us, but it's not going to happen because we're too powerful. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments down below. If you would like an Akashic reading, I am still offering those. I've really enjoyed doing the Akashic readings for people that have requested them so far. So if you do want one, I am still offering. You can send me an email, or if you would like more information about an Akashic reading, then just send me an email also, and I'll definitely get back to you. Okay, much love from wherever you, from me to wherever you are in the world right now. Peace.